Hey, I'm Keith Spira from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk is bluesman Bobby Rush. Mr. Rush, in a word, what is the blues?
Botheration on your mind. What I mean about that, something on your mind that's bothering you, can't do anything about it. That's the blues.
Botheration. We will talk about all that and more this week on Let's Talk.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV. Celebrate.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by.
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Welcome to the 4th of July edition to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and again, looking for a great hour of sports talk for you, covering all the home teams. Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, all on tap for us, breaking it down. You know, two of the best we have in the state. Les Seats of CrestCitySports.com and also Saturday Down South. Also part of, again, the team over at 106.7 The Ticket. And John Sokoloff of WGNO-TV Sports are our guests tonight. All right, happy 4th of July to everyone again.
Thank
and
you,
as we are, I've got actually Les's wife gave me this tie, so again, Les and I doing a little American flag.
Our Yankee Doodleist outfits.
There you go.
Color coordinating. I feel kind of left out. I'm kidding.
No, you're looking good though. Hey guys, before we get started, we always like to let the audience know a little bit about what you guys are involved in. Les, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Of course, I'm writing for Crescent City Sports and been busy. Saw John a couple of times recently out at Pelicans events related to the draft. And of course, we're getting ready to gear up for Saints training camp. Ken Trahan's already started with the high school previews, which he does such a great job with. And LSU and Tulane stuff from Renee Nato. So we're got everything covered. As preseason looms over us, I'll be writing about LSU for Saturday Down South. And I have my novel, Donkeys, Elephants, and Giraffes, which is available on all the major online platforms, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, etc.
Right. And a new book coming pretty soon. We can't let the cat out of the bag yet, but you'll be hearing about it on this program.
Very
and
excited
also on our
about
radio
that
show.
project.
No doubt. John, welcome back to the show, and John has done such a great job. I was telling John before he came on, not only doing a great job over Channel 26, again doing reporting and anchoring, but also he's on everybody's radio show now. Again, he does a great job again breaking down sports for us. And we love having him on this program as well. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Love, everything at WGNO, all the stuff that we've been up to lately, sports-wise. Obviously at 6 and 10 o'clock, we recap the day in sports with, feature stories and keeping you up to date as well. And obviously also our Sports Zone program that airs at 10:30. And then on Saturday morning where we recap the week in sports, it's 30 minutes. We break down big topics, feature stories as well, the whole 9 yards. So you can get a lot of great sports content on WGNO TV.
Make sure you check it out. Again, they do a fantastic job over Channel 26. We will start with the Pelicans today. And, of course, a lot going on with Joe Dumars, who has been very, very busy since taking over as Vice President of Basketball Operations. Last week, of course, the NBA draft. Jeremiah Fears, for the first pick out of Oklahoma, 7th overall guard. Derek Queen, power forward center, 13th overall pick after a trade with Atlanta that moved up from 23, giving up next year's number 1 pick, which is unprotected. It will be either the Milwaukee pick that was with the Drew Holiday pick or the New Orleans pick, whichever is, again, the more favorable to Atlanta. And then, again, Makai Peavy, a wing, 40th overall, coming with the trade from Atlanta. And, of course, he is out of Georgetown. Dumars also, again, made a move in free agency on the first day of free agency, bringing in Kevon Looney, formerly the Golden State Warriors, 2 years, $16 million. Of course, 6'9", power forward / center, about 5 points a game, 6 rebounds a game, and a guy that's won a few, I think 3 NBA championships. So he brings that pedigree to the Pelicans. I'll start with you first, Les. Your thoughts on what Joe Dumars has done thus far in terms of, again, turning this team around. Of course, I did not mention the trade with C.J. McCollum and Kelly Olynyk going to Washington, and Jordan Poole and Sadiq Bey coming back to New Orleans as well, along with, again, I believe it was the 40th overall pick that they ended up picking Peavy with. Your thoughts?
I like what he's done. Of course, you can nitpick about the trade, and I'm sure we'll get into that, and rightfully so. But, he's undoubtedly demonstrated his vision and put his fingerprints all over this roster already. He's said very clearly that they're going to be aggressive as an organization. They want to be aggressive as a team, and they want high character guys who are all about winning. He talked about the 2 picks in the first round, about how they didn't just come in, put up a bunch of stats and then go on to the NBA in college. They contributed to winning programs, and that was significant to him. So it's clear what he thinks this organization needs to get back to where it was 2 years ago, and he's been very aggressive in doing that. Now, like any draft choices and even trades and free agency, ultimately, if they made the right judgment, is going to determine whether they did the right thing. Now, if these guys are who they think they are, I think he's done a great job. If the draft choices especially aren't as good as he thinks they're going to be, then there's going to be a lot of second guessing, and rightfully so. But to this point, they feel very strongly about the moves they made, the guys they brought in, and I think with good reason. So I like everything he's done.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there, but the big elephant in the room, and you even talked about it, was giving up that 2026 unprotected pick. I can't remember the last time a team that drafted as highly as the Pelicans did, 7th, gave up their unprotected pick the next year. Whenever you see teams give up unprotected first rounders, usually it's a couple years down the line and they're bringing in a great star where, okay, maybe your next few first rounders aren't going to be very good. If it's like Miami, I don't want a Miami first round pick. They're always in the playoffs. I don't want a Warriors first rounder. The Pelicans, unfortunately, you're coming off a 21-win season. So that's a huge risk. I don't know why it wasn't top 5 protected. But again, look, these front offices, I don't think leaders of front offices have ever had less time to do their job. So you have to be aggressive. You have to, get out there and make the moves that you think are essential in order to keep your job. But everything that they have done, do they have a better roster now than they did a year ago? I think so. I mean, CJ was getting older and 33 years old. They probably weren't going to keep him around. Kelly Olynyk, I mean, let's just face it, it was just a matching contract to make the Brandon Ingram trade work. Right. The money asset was that Pacers pick. So I think Poole makes them better because of the skill set he brings in, explosive scorer. I like the draft picks, but the best part of the draft, Derek Queen was, I don't want to say controversial, but he has his strengths and weaknesses. With Jeremiah Fears, that kid was the age of a high school senior last year. Right. Single-handedly dragged Oklahoma to the tournament, a team that's, let's face it, not exactly a historic basketball program. Every time he put his head down, I thought that he was getting to the rim and scoring. And the thing that would translate the most for him, that makes me confident that he'll be a good player at the NBA, he got to the line a ton. And that is what helps these smaller guards be successful. So he's the most exciting asset that they acquired, in my opinion, this offseason so far.
Let's talk fears, and then we'll get back to the trade, and also, again, Queen as well as Peavy, and, of course, bringing in Poole as well as Bay, pardon me. When you look at fears, and you look at, 6'2.5", again, they was at the Combine, 6'4" with shoes on. What I saw was a guy with a tremendous amount of speed, was able to open up room for him to be able to get his shot off because of the speed. Obviously, again, his size, like 180 pounds. He's going to have to gain some weight there, in the weight room. How effective do you think he will be as a rookie, having to come in, playing against men? He would be 19 years old, I believe, when the season starts in October. Thoughts there?
Unbelievably raw. So. It's all about development with him. Do you throw him into the Wolves? Do you let him start? Maybe you have Poole start. You go point Zion. You have Jeremiah Fears come off the bench and get limited minutes and see what works best. Could he be a guy that could fit next to Zion if he's off the ball? Could he be a guy where, all right, maybe they go back and forth. Some situations he'll handle the ball. Some situations Zion will. Willie Green, I mean, this roster is... There's so many different ways that he can go about using it and finding out what works. Where I'm not sure. I mean, is it better to have him be, at the G League a little bit longer and get more touches that way? These are all things they'll consider. I think he plays. I think he comes off the bench at first and ends up earning more opportunities as the season goes on. It's not the easiest thing in the world to fit next to Zion Williamson. I don't think I'm exactly breaking news because he needs the ball in his hands, and if it's not in his hands, I mean, he doesn't exactly space the floor. So a lot of questions, but that's why, Willie Green, that's why they kept him around. They think that he can right this ship with a bunch of very intriguing pieces.
And look, what John said about him, what he did in Oklahoma, SEC, playing in the best league in America last year, and doing what he did was impressive. His transition to the NBA, your thoughts?
Well, we're going to find out really fast because Joe Dumars said the approach is based, because he was asked, DeJounte Murray's probably not going to be ready to start the season, so can you envision Fears being your starting point guard on opening night, which I think is a real possibility. And he said, we're going to give him as much as he can handle. So we're going to find out if he shows he can handle running with the first team and handle the preseason games, shows himself in training camp, he's going to be your starting point guard on opening night, at least till DeJounte Murray gets healthy. Now, if they decide that they're better off going with Poole or Jose Alvarado or whatever in the short term, then that tells you that he's not quite there yet, that he's going to take some time to get to where they expect him to be. And I don't expect as a rookie, he's going to have a huge impact, but he's going to have an opportunity to play a lot of minutes early on if he proves he can handle it. And I think that makes the Vegas League interesting, assuming he's going to participate. I assume he will. And then we'll see. Come opening night, it's going to be real interesting to see who that starting point guard is.
And I do think that the Queen trade, really quickly, I do think that impacts Fears' minutes. Because
in what way?
Because you can't mess around. You can't say, all right, well, we like this kid. He needs to learn through getting minutes and wait around on this. This year needs to be, Joe Dumars pushed all his chips into the basket.
Agreed.
If you give up next year, if that ends up being a top 5 pick, in my opinion, that ends up being a monumental disaster for this team.
I agree.
So you need to do whatever it takes to translate to the most wins possible next season so that trade does not blow up in your face. I'm not going to lie, that's the kind of move that gets somebody fired if that trade ends up being in the top 5. Now, I'm not saying he would get fired right away, but that is a really, really bad look. So, maybe that would impact Fears' minutes. And, Alvarado and Poole over him here. Maybe in the long term it would benefit Fears to play more now, but we need to focus on wins for this season because we don't have our pick.
Yeah. I want to go to Queen next. And again, of course, the Queen was acquired. First of all, the Pelicans traded, again, the 2026 Indiana first-round pick, which was top 4 protected in the Toronto trade from Brandon Ingram, back to the Pacers for the 23rd overall pick. Dumars took that 23rd overall pick and again, along with along with, again, the unprotected Milwaukee pick from, as we had mentioned, from the Drew Holiday trade, and New Orleans is unprotected next year's first-round pick, and either or, the most favorable of that, and they traded that to Atlanta to move up 10 spots to get Derek Queen. 247-pound center, 6'9", center power forward from Maryland. Your thoughts on Queen and his impact on the Pelicans in the first season?
Well, I think he's a great decision maker, with the ball in his hands. I mean, Les and I just saw him the other day. He's enormous, He's listed 6'10". He's only 20. I think he's still growing. I think he's 6'11" at this point. Defensively, I think in some certain situations could be good. There's some question marks about it, but being a great decision maker with the ball in your hands is good because it allows you to space the floor. If you get rid of the ball quickly, you have a high IQ player, that'll help, generate good stuff for your offense. Also gives you good front court depth. So the player himself I really like, and also he hit that buzzer beater in the second round of the NCAA tournament. It shows that late in games, he thrives on those situations. So that's when the lights are at their brightest, he's really good in that regard too. So he has just a plethora of upside in my opinion when you look at obviously his wingspan and his makeup as a player, but what we saw in those stints at Maryland already, he has a lot of potential and he could be used in a ton of different ways. You play him at the 4, you put him at the 5.
Right.
I mean, there's a bunch of ways he can be used.
First team All Big Ten, Big Ten Freshman of the Year, had 15 double-doubles again for Maryland. A guy that looks like, again, he's got an NBA body, but he's going to have to get in the weight room. And again, John talked about it. His basketball IQ is off the charts, his ability to pass the basketball. How quickly do you think he can assimilate into the lineup?
Oh, I think he'll definitely be in the rotation because, one, he can spell Yves Missi.
Right.
He can spell Zion Williamson. And his skill set is such, I think he's the perfect fit for Willie Green because I think Willie wants to be able to switch all 5 positions when they play defense. When they had Jonas Valanciunas, who was a warrior, great Pelican, but he wasn't really didn't have the skill set that really fits the way Willie wants to play. I think this guy and Yves Missi both give him the type of center where they can play the type of defense, switch a lot more than maybe they were able to do in the past. So I think he's very valuable there. He, good decision maker, like you said, good passer. I mean, he can do a little bit of everything. So I think he's definitely going to find a niche right away. And I thought the most interesting thing Joe Dumars said on Wednesday night was that he said the evening began with them thinking they might have to choose between Fears and Queen, and they wound up getting both of them. So that tells me, one, they had Queen rated ahead of the center from Duke,
right,
who went right after the Pelicans, shortly after the Pelicans. And so he was at least 7 or 8 on their board. He might have been higher. So to get him at 13, I think helps explain why they were willing to give up so much to go from 23 to 13, because he wasn't going to be there at 23. And Dumars' mindset was, this is the guy we want, and I'm not going to worry about what place this pick might be next year. This guy is one of the pieces that's going to keep us out of the lottery next year. And so I think that was really, this was a guy they coveted, obviously, by what they gave up for him. Now, it all comes down to, are they right? Because most teams didn't think as highly of him as they did.
Right.
But it's going to come down to, were they right or were they wrong?
You saw the twinkle in Joe Dumars' eye when talking to us after the draft about Queen's pre-draft visit, about conversations, the dinner they had together. Clearly, they think it's a match made in heaven. And one other thing that I think he'll really bring to the table is if he catches the ball at the perimeter, he's athletic enough where you got to have to keep him somewhat honest, where you'll have to play somewhat close to him, because if you don't, he can put the ball on the floor and drive right by you and score. He's that athletic. So that is another big positive.
Yeah, and look, I love his passing ability, and again, his ability, the way he sees the floor. I have no issue with the player. I have issue with what the cost may be. And again, you had a a first-round pick that was top 5 protected from Indiana. You traded that to get him back into this draft to get 23. Again, now we know Miles Turner is leaving Indiana to go to Milwaukee. And of course, Halliburton, you didn't know at the time, Halliburton with the Achilles tendon injury. All of a sudden now you're looking at a team that was in the NBA Finals this year that may be in the lottery next year. So again, that's a possible lottery pick you gave up. And again, it was top 5 protected, but you still gave up a possible lottery pick. And then we fast forward to, again, on draft night, giving up, again, either the New Orleans pick, which was not top 5 protected or lottery protected, and of course the Milwaukee pick, Damian Lillard, again being bought out today. We don't know if the Greek Freak's going to be traded or moving on, so we have no idea where Milwaukee will be, but that could possibly be a lottery pick as well. So again, right now it looks great. The kid looks like he's going to be a nice player for you, but the cost may again be too much. And again, to me, I said it last week, aggressive or reckless. Again, it could be one or the other.
And I agree with all of that, and it could be one or the other. But Dumars's point, and I don't disagree with it, is we're going to be aggressive, and he's not thinking about what might happen next year. He's saying, here's a guy who's what we're looking for, and he's brought in 6 guys of note here already, and says this guy at Maryland is the guy. Derek Queen, he's one of the pieces. He fits in here just the way we want him. Yeah, I would like to protect that number 1 pick, but if Atlanta is not going to budge off of that, and are you going to let the player you covet get away because you're afraid of where the pick a year after this guy has already started his career, where that pick might be? He may be wrong, he may be reckless, but his mindset is, I'm building this team. I'm not going to stagnate on the building of this team because of something that might happen down the road or might not happen down the road. Maybe the Bucks and the Pelicans both make the playoffs, and people are saying, wow, the Hawks really didn't get much out of that trade. So, I mean, that's his mindset, right or wrong. And again, whether this guy's really good or not will determine that. But I understand his thought process.
And look, I mean, going off what you said there too, this Pelicans team won 49 games a year ago. Right. If Zion's healthy, now granted, might be the biggest if in the NBA, if Zion's healthy, if he can play, whatever. He played 70 games, last season, and they won 49 of them. If the Pelicans make the playoffs, this trade is a big-time success, depending on, even if Queen's just decent, it's a huge success. So that's something else. And Joe Dumars, I mean, it just shows this fan base that he's pushing everything in this basket to make this team as good as possible, as quickly as possible. But again, this team won 49 games a year ago. Great. Also, this team won 49 games a year ago, but now you're betting on a guy to be healthy and contribute who has not been reliable, has not been available. So that is one of the biggest problems.
Right. And they lost, and they won 49 games again a couple of years ago because, again, and they also had Larry Nance.
Yep.
They also had, Dyson Daniels. They had Valanciunas. They had Brandon Ingram, and then the guard forward that went to Dallas. Najee Marshall. Okay, which again, I will say, you take those players, and I'll exclude Brandon Ingram, but those players in a lot of cases were the defense for this team. They were the heart and soul of this team, and of course that got gutted. And you saw again and I understand another move by a general manager or a vice president of basketball operations who felt again that they had to do something. And going after DeJounte Murray, everybody was all for it, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Again, he was a point guard, he was a leader, everything you wanted. Of course, the injury obviously again affected that decision. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But again, it is a roll of the dice on the part of Joe Dumars. And look, you're looking at young players too, right? You talked about Fears coming in. Would he be 19 next year again? When was it 19 when the season starts?
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, 20 years old is when Queen will be 20, right? So you got two very, very young players you're bringing in as well. Again, with your 2 first-round picks. So it'll be interesting to see again how quickly they can get on the court and be effective.
And I think that's one reason why it's not a marquee move, but the Looney move makes sense.
Absolutely.
And in fact, Joe said, I think it was at the Saturday news conference, talking about how watching the playoffs with Minnesota and Oklahoma City and some other teams, there's sort of a renaissance of centers. Some teams are playing two centers at the same time.
That's right.
So you're going to have to match up with two centers at the same time sometimes, which means probably you're going to need a third guy to get decent minutes over the course of the season. So he said, I'm not sure we're done with centers, and we didn't know Looney was going to be the guy. So now he's got the three centers, but he's got a guy with 3 rings. He's got a guy who's a real professional, a guy who can show the two young centers how to be a professional. Brings a lot of intangibles to the equation and some experience to what is a very young roster. So I think go beyond the stats on the Looney signing, and I think you'll see a significant acquisition.
Looney, 2 years, again, $16 million, $8 million a year for him. And of course, I do want to mention also Greg Monroe, New Orleanian on that staff, former center, played for Dumars at Detroit. He's also, again, there helping the centers grow again, especially those young centers. You wanted to mention something?
I was just going to say, I mean, your point about Looney was fantastic. 3 titles on the Warriors, knew his role in the system. That's going to be a huge thing. I feel like with these Pelicans teams the last couple of years, and maybe injuries was part of this, but guys didn't really embrace their roles as much. It was kind of lopsided. This night you'll have 28. Okay, well this night you'll only play 12 minutes, whatnot. Looney, for a decade, did the same exact thing. He got a ton of offensive rebounds. He knew his role. He played big minutes for Steve Kerr, and he won 3 rings. So now coming over here with the Pels, we know exactly what they're going to ask of him. They're going to, hey, 20, 25 minutes a night, maybe a little bit more. He'll hound the glass. He'll be great in any kind of motion offense that they bring in there, and that would be a great signing. We knew going into the start of free agency, they had 1 roster spot left, and it was a very youthful front court. So they needed someone else in there who had experience that could be, obviously a big piece for this. And that is what Kevon Looney is. That's what he'll bring. And they used a lot of their non-taxpayer mid-level exception to get him. So now they're at 15 players. They're right near the tax. And this is basically, barring a huge trade that we don't know about that may be in the works, this is looking like what the team will be this year.
And I would not be surprised if there is a huge trade there. Is Looney your starter?
Maybe at first. I mean, again, you can't think about long-term, okay, well, maybe Queen needs more minutes now to help him later. No, you need to focus on the amount of wins at this point. I think it may also be matchup dependent, depending on, that's one good thing about this roster. It's very versatile, so they can do a lot of things. Could they put Trey Murphy at the 4? Maybe, so there's a lot of different ways. But in terms of experience, I mean, he has the experience to be a starter for them, no doubt.
Same question?
Yeah, that's a good question. My guess would be that they go ahead and start Messi. He started more as a rookie than expected because of some injuries and because he proved he could handle it. And I think his development would continue on the fast track if he were able to start. And I think Looney, because of the selflessness you talked about, would more easily adapt to coming off the bench. And by the way, that's one of the major attributes of Queen that they loved, is that they said he can score 20, and if they lose he's depressed. He can score 6 and they win, and he's the happiest guy in the locker room. And I think Looney's presence will only continue to nurture that selfishness as well, selflessness as well.
And remember, they're not going to start more than probably 1 big man. And now if they play 2 bigs, I would imagine Zion's off the floor. You're not going to start 2 non-shooting bigs with Zion there. I mean, the spacing would be a disaster. That was the one enticing thing about Kelly Olynyk out there, for that brief stints that we saw him.
But Queen could be a Kelly Olynyk type.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, in term down the line because of his passing ability. All right, so you've added Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, and Kevon Looney again as your vets. You draft Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, and Makai Peavy. Is this a better team now than they were last year?
I think so, and I say that because I think the pieces fit together better and are more consistent with Willie Green's vision of what the roster ideally will be. And as good as that's hard to say because Murray, McCollum, Williamson, Ingram never played together. I don't think a single minute the whole year. I think Williamson and Murray, the only 2 left from that group, they only played together, I think, in 6 games. So it's really hard to say because we never saw last year's team. But if you're just looking at the roster going into the last year, the roster going into this year, I would say I think they can be better this year because I think the team is greater than the sum of the parts, more so than last year's was.
Definitely. And I just think there's much more floor spacing with this year's group, and I think that'll help. I think even Fears, he didn't shoot it the best last year, but there's definitely potential with that jumper. He had to create his own jumper a lot as well. But Poole, Sadiq Bey, these guys, they space the floor. Even Queen can, like what you said with his passing. So that makes them better as well. But the one thing I'm talking about is there's so many unknowns. What is Jordan Poole going to be?
Right.
Has anyone had a more bizarre NBA career than that guy? In Washington, or Golden State, they don't win that title without him. They don't.
Agreed.
He was amazing for them for those 2 years, rewarded on a team that was already, with some money issues because they had to pay Draymond and Steph and Clay and all those max contracts. They still said, Jordan Poole, you are so good, we'll pay hundreds of millions in the luxury tax just to keep you around. They gave him 4 years, 130 mil. They win that title. They wouldn't win it without him. He was amazing against Boston, and then gets punched by Draymond, and then ends up being a salary dump about 12 months later.
Right.
So who knows where this kid's head's at? How helpful is he going to be with New Orleans
But he did
once
play
he
better
comes
with
around?
Washington last year.
He did, but my only thing with that was Washington was trying to tank.
Agreed.
They didn't pound the table saying we want Jordan Poole. No, okay, thank you, Golden State. We'll give you Chris Paul. We'll take Jordan Poole. We'll take whatever asset you give us back. It was a salary dump kind of thing. Were those stats kind of inflated?
Okay.
I don't know. We'll see how it works here. But he did mesh well with others in Golden State. And again, another big part of this, he played with Kevon Looney, and those guys worked very well together.
That is a great point.
Yeah.
And there's another part of this as well, with again DeJounte Murray not knowing when he will come back, maybe January or so. Again, even before the Fears pick, you would thought that again that at that point Poole was going to be the starting point guard for you, depending on again when he came back, and then eventually maybe go either backup point guards or sixth man.
Yeah, I think he, to some degree, takes C.J. McCollum's role, a guy, a combo guard, guy who's probably more of a 2 than a 1, but can play the 1 in a pinch, and is 8 years younger, which was one of the keys to the trade. So, I agree with everything you said about Poole. He's a big part of what they plan to do going forward, and he's also a big question mark. I mean, when he was in Golden State, I thought he already was the next great offensive player for the Warriors system. And then it all went south. They sent him to Washington. You're right. It's hard to evaluate the 20.5 points per game last year because of the situation. But I think that's a situation where Joe Dumars, being a Hall of Fame player and an NBA champion player and general manager, and Willie Green being a former NBA player, I think they feel very confident that whatever issues Poole might have with the roller coaster he's been on the last couple of years, they can help him navigate that very effectively. And I think they're probably right in that estimation.
He's also only got 2 years left on his contract, so he's going to want to get paid again. So that's another motivating factor for him.
I would agree. John Sokoloff and Les East are our guests. I'm Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We're here from our underwriters. We'll come back, talk a little Saints, LSU, Tulane, all coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Les East and John Sokoloff, our guest here on the panel tonight. All right, guys, let's talk a little Saints. And it's really tough to kind of know anything about this team right now because of, again, what transpired or did not transpire during mini camp and also OTAs. But I'll throw it to you first, Les. What type of team do you think Coach Moore has here in New Orleans with the moves they made in the offseason, with the change on the coaching staff, the change in the systems? What's the ceiling for this team in your opinion?
Well, that's a good question. I think this is a team that's hungry and eager, and excited. Now, what that translates into in wins and losses, nobody knows. I think the ceiling is a winning record, and they compete to win a mediocre division. Although I think the division has gotten marginally better over the last couple of years. But I think you could conceivably 9 or 10 wins could win this division. I think that's probably where their ceiling is. I'm not saying they're going to get there, but I think that would be the ceiling. But beyond that, I don't know that we can say they have much of an identity. I think it's pretty simple. If the 3 young offensive linemen all pan out and that unit is cohesive, they can be very good. And if one or more of those young linemen spit the bit and it doesn't all come together, the gap between the floor and the ceiling of the offense is enormous based on what that offensive line does, because if they are a good unit, then they can run the ball, and the young quarterback, whoever it is in favorable situations. They stay on schedule, they pass protect, and life becomes a whole lot easier for whoever the quarterback is. And if that offensive line can't do that and they can't run the ball, then the rookie quarterback is going to look, or the second-year quarterback is going to look like a young quarterback, because we saw what happened last year with Spencer Rattler when the offensive line was a disaster. So if the offensive line is really good and makes life easy for the young quarterback, they can be pretty good. And I think their defense has a chance to be good. I think Brandon Staley's got a smart system that will play to their strengths. But if that offensive line isn't above average, then it all comes apart.
Same question.
It's really hard because I feel like in the NFL, it's harder to fully write teams off unless, the schedule is completely abysmal. They play in a horrific division and whatnot. With the Saints, there's so much that's new. Brandon Staley is new. Whenever he's been a defensive coordinator, it was amazing. The Rams in 2020 led the NFL in scoring defense and were near the top in every category. What's that going to look like? What's Chase Young looking like, with an actual offseason? It's kind of strange. The offensive line, Banks, Fuaga, Penning, all very young guys. Olave's young, a lot of young players. And then you got your, Brandon Cooks and Cam Jordan and Demario Davis and Tyrann Mathieu. A lot of old guys, a lot of young guys. We don't really know what this team is. Kellen's never been a head coach before. What's Staley's defense going to look like? What can you expect out of Chase Young? So many questions. But like Les said, when you're in a division like this, that is this bad, and I get it. I really like Michael Penix. I think Atlanta is solid. I think if Penix was in this draft that just happened, I think he goes number 1. Like I'm very high on him in that regard. But Atlanta, they're never an insane, overwhelming threat. Since 2016, they haven't been. And you look at Carolina, I mean, they were a disaster, got a little better as the season went on. The Bucs are the main real threat, but you're one Baker injury away from really, potentially winning this division. So I think their ceiling is the 9-10 win range. That's the absolute ceiling for this team. I also feel like there's something to be said about when your team playing without much urgency behind you. I think Kellen knows he's got time. He's got time to build this thing. He's got his quarterback. He was a second rounder. He's got time to develop that. He's got time to, work through the kinks of being a new head coach. I think Mickey and Kellen are going to be patient. So maybe, I don't want to say playing with house money, but without that sense of urgency, maybe that would be more helpful. I'm not sure. But there are a lot of obvious, question marks with this. And it's hard to talk about a ceiling when we've never seen Tyler Shuck throw an NFL pass.
Right.
At OTAs, they only did 7-on-7. And Spencer Rattler, I mean, that poor kid, man, that O-line, like Les said, was awful last year. It was hurt. They didn't have a Brandon Cooks in there. Shaheed was hurt. Chris Olave was hurt. Kamara was hurt. The defense, the run defense was atrocious. How is Spencer Rattler supposed to even remotely potentially succeed with all of that? So we don't really know what he is yet, and we don't know what Shuck is yet. So it's hard to put a ceiling on it, but I do think 9 or 10 wins could be it.
It reminded me a lot last year of Archie Manning and the Saints of my youth.
Oh, man.
It really did. I mean, in terms of, again, how Rattler was running around and just the lack of protection.
And yet we saw that second quarter against the Bucks. He was phenomenal. They put up 27 unanswered points or something in that game against the Bucks, and it all came apart in the second half. But he's a playmaker. You can see, and we don't know if it's going to be him or Shuck at this point. I think they'll both have some opportunities during the season. But he's a playmaker, and Shuck, I think, is better prepared to play as a rookie than most rookie quarterbacks are. So it's a possibility that the quarterback position can be stable enough, but everything around them has to work in order for that to happen.
Defensively, with the change from the 4-3 to the 3-4, and we've talked about it a lot on the radio show, on this show. I've talked to both you guys about it on both shows as well. You've drafted for one prototype for almost 15 years. Now, again, you're changing that over. There is a transition period in terms of, again, changing the prototype of player that you want to play that defense. So I'm interested to see, again, how much 3-4 we'll see, how much of a hybrid we'll see, how much 4-3 we'll see, and again, how these players will fit in a 3-4 defense. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Brandon Staley talked about this a bit when the initial get acquainted session we had with all the assistant coaches, and I think he's very smart. And you mentioned 3-4, 4-3, hybrid, edge rushers. Sometimes they stand up, sometimes they have their hand in the ground. Cam Jordan may be playing inside, Brian Bresee may be playing outside. Chase Young can probably play both. So, what he talked about was, as any smart coordinator would, is you adapt your system to the talent you have on hand. And the Saints were drafting to try and fit guys into the system they had, and they did it for the most part very well while Dennis Allen was here, and then it came apart last year. But you also have to be flexible enough, and the Saints haven't had enough time with this regime to draft to the system. But I think his system was already flexible enough that he has had time now to evaluate what he has on hand, and I think it will be hard to predict what they're going to do on any given down, because they're going to have the ability to morph in and out of 3-4, 4-3, stand up and linebacker. And so I think he is just the right guy to try and maximize the talent they have on hand, which is not great, but it's good enough, I think, if they stay healthy, that they can have a pretty good defense. And I think he's the right guy because of the way he's going to use those players.
Couldn't agree more. And the guy who I'm most excited about in that 3-4 defense is Chase Young, as we talked about. We talked about, guys shifting around. Chase Young in that 3-4 could be dropping back, a little linebacker action for him in his coverage. Well, again, with the full offseason, they gave him a good contract. He was the number 2 overall pick in the draft. I got to talk to him in the locker room about adjusting to this scheme and interviewed him about that. He played in a similar scheme his rookie season in the NFL, did well with that too. So, the dude is just a freak. He's a freak of nature. He's every bit of 6'6", 250 pounds, all muscle. He spent $30,000 on some body machine to help him stay healthy this offseason. He's very committed and he's healthy, and I think he'll do incredibly well. They didn't pay him all that money to not think that he would thrive in this system. I love the up front with the defense. The massive question is the secondary. I love the Justin Reed signing. The dude knows what it takes to win. He's strong, he's tough, he'll hold people accountable back there. That's great. This secondary, the only problem that worries me is I feel like they're going to rely so much, and Alontae Taylor's going to be good too, but Kool-Aid McKinstry, they need him. If they're reaching the ceiling that Les and I were talking about, they need him to be an above average corner at the very least. They need him to take that step up. And I think he can. Based on what we saw, he looks incredibly athletic out there, looks bigger, stronger, faster. Looks like he likes the scheme too. So relying on those two guys, it's good. But they're going to need, another diamond in the rough. Could that be a Quincy Riley type, the 4th round pick out of Louisville? You lost Paulson Adebo. Quincy Riley could be inside, outside, whatever they need. So that's where I'm really looking at. I think up front they're going to be okay, and they're going to be much improved compared to a year ago. But the secondary is where I'm the most intrigued to see what happens.
Yeah, I would agree. Your thoughts on the secondary? Is that the weak link on the defense right now?
Yeah, and I think so. And the strange thing is, at this time last year, cornerback was the deepest spot on the team.
Yes.
And then they traded away Marshawn Lattimore, one of the best cover corners in the history of the franchise. Right. And then Paulson Adebo signs with the Giants in free agency. And so Alontae Taylor is now sort of your slot corner, although he may play outside at some point. So you're right, McKinstry really becomes a huge piece there, and it's a great opportunity for Riley as a rookie to come in. But compared to what they had at this time last year, at the top of that depth chart, does not have the experience and the proven playmaking ability that it had a year ago, and that's why I fully expect that they're going to bring in a cornerback at some point, whether they sign somebody who's still on the free agent market, make a trade, or wait till the cut down and sign somebody. It may not be a big splash. It may just be a depth person they bring in at the end, but I think they need to bring another veteran in to help out the cornerbacks. The safeties, at least with Matthew and Reed, they have proven veterans who are playmakers, and so there's some stability there in the interior of the secondary. Cornerback is the biggest question mark. I think that was their biggest need going into the draft, and they never, they got the one player,
Riley in the fourth round.
but they didn't get a big impact player, at least not that we know of at this point. To help out there.
And Quincy Riley, we didn't get to see that much of him because he was hurt coming off a knee injury, so he didn't get to practice too much in the off-season programs that we were allowed to watch.
Right. And look, it just goes to show you, if there's a critical part of this defense this year that has to be top in the NFL or again, one of the best in the NFL, they've got to have a pass rush. Again, if you don't have a pass rush, that defensive back is going to be even more exposed. So if somehow they can garner a pass rush and get again these signal callers again on their back foot with some pressure, that's going to go a long way in helping them as well.
And that brings us to Chase Young, sixth in the NFL in QB hurries last year. That's why they brought him back.
And real quick, a couple of guys I didn't mention on the front. Devon Godchaux, the LSU guy that they acquired.
Huge for the run defense.
Yeah, and if the run defense is better, then that helps the pass rush because of the situations. And then also Carl Granderson's probably been their most consistent defensive lineman over the last couple of years.
Agreed.
Gotten better every year since he came in, and he's a big part of what they're going to try and do up front.
Let's switch to LSU baseball, winning their 8th national championship, sweeping Coastal Carolina. LSU also went undefeated in Omaha. It's been it's incredible to see, again, one talk about the renaissance of LSU baseball under Coach Johnson, and especially, again, in the era that we're in now. He comes up with the #1 transfer portal, the #1 recruiting class. We've talked about it before. Again, the LSU brand, the NIL money now, the blue blood. They should have an opportunity to be on top every single season now with Johnson. But he's in the toughest league in America, in the SEC, which again, that's going to be a difficult schedule to get through. But again, it proved itself out this year with going through that schedule, that it made them battle tested for Omaha. Now again, where do you find 2 ace pitchers like you had this year, which is one of the reasons why they end up winning it all? But you got to feel pretty good about it, about where LSU baseball is right now, considering again the era we're in and what Johnson has been able to do so far since he's been there.
Yeah, well, they had the best 1-2 pitching combination in the country, and that's why they won the World Series in a nutshell. And don't know that you can duplicate that, but 2 years ago they won it more so with the hitting that they had than the pitching. So he's proven he can get the talent to win in a variety of ways. And I think something that gets overlooked with Jay Johnson sometimes is, naturally we focus on the recruiting and the transfer portal and the big name recruits that he gets, and that's the lifeblood of any program. But he's such a good teacher. The player development has been outstanding, and the players said it over and over again. Ianson said it after he pitched in Game 2 and they clinched the title. is that he breaks the game down and makes it so simple for every player on the roster. You need to do this. And that's not only the role for the season, but it's for every single game. And I just think the IQ of the LSU team is through the roof. And I just think, Jay Johnson doesn't get recognized enough for the hands-on coaching that he and his staff have been able to do with the players once they get all of these talented players to Baton Rouge.
I couldn't agree more with what you said. I was there for the regional games, the supers, and him teaching also is kind of parallel with his ability to make adjustments in games, which are also teachable moments.
Right.
Danny Dickinson, their first game against Little Rock, he hit 2 homers, asked him about it. First thing he says, yeah, Jay Johnson came up to me and talked about how I was chasing too much, helped me relax, then I hit 2 bombs. Stephen Milam, bases clearing double with obviously bases loaded, and hit a grand slam in that super. First thing, when you ask him about, being ready for those big moments, first thing he says, Jay Johnson, he's the best coach in the country. He took Arizona to the College World Series a ton. If you're able to do that with that program, now he's just showing what he can do with more resources. I think you made a great point about the SEC. Nothing prepares you more than that. Every year since 2016, there's been at least one team in the championship series from the Southeastern Conference. In 2016, it was Arizona and Coastal, but after that, every year it's been at least one. And just insane. The thing that impressed me the most about this year's team, 2023 was more star power. Oh, we're going to have the top 2 picks with Cruz and Skeens. Oh, we got Tommy Tanks. We got this. We got that. Just insane amount of star power. This year, yes, an elite 1-2 punch. Outside of that, I think this team just played great fundamental baseball. They were fantastic defensively. They knew, situationally, which comes back to Johnson, how to take advantage of the bigger moments. They were unbelievable with 2 outs, which just shows, situational baseball they're great at. So this one, in a way, was kind of more impressive to me, winning it all than before, despite having an easy regional and a pretty easy super path. I'll tell you this, not easy to win, all those games in Omaha and end up not losing a single one.
True. Piggyback on what John just talked about, because I think that's a great point.
Yeah, there's no question that he is a game manager of the highest level, in addition to everything he does. And so, if you're getting the best, as good of players as any team in the country, and you're developing them and simplifying their roles so they feel comfortable and confident in what they can do to contribute, no matter how big or small that role is, and then you're able to adjust smartly during games, I don't really know how you can beat that program. Right. And you're right about the star power with Skeens, as dominant as he was. Cade Anderson almost matched him this year, which is amazing that he could do that.
One of the best outings in College World Series history, no doubt.
Agreed.
He had 1-2-3 inning and finished with a 3-hit shutout in the championship series. Just unbelievable. But it was Dylan Cruz and it was Tommy Tanks, and then even Trey Morgan late in the season really came on. This team didn't really have that star power beyond the 2 pitchers, and yet that may even play into Johnson's strengths even more, because those players sometimes are easier to mold into the type of team you want. Not that White or Cruz didn't do that, but sometimes if you don't have the star power, it's easier to maximize what the team can do.
And if you remember that Cade outing, this goes based on Jay being a great game manager. You go back to that Cade outing, game 1 against Coastal, he was at 20-ish pitches in the first inning. You're thinking, oh man, this Coastal team's been resilient. They haven't lost yet here. How many games have they won in a row? 26, something crazy. He calms down. He has an amazing outing. We know the rest of the story, complete game shutout. Johnson's managing definitely had to play a role in that.
And his decision to ride Anderson to the end was smart, because he wound up 132 pitches, I think, and he could have easily pulled him in the 9th inning, especially after the base runner. Yeah. And he didn't, and that's just intuitively knowing this is the guy that's going to win this game. I'm not going to bring anybody else in, and it was smart and
saved his pitching.
Saved his pitching, and also you're thinking, okay, he probably wasn't on the longest leash in that moment, but Jay Johnson sitting in the dugout thinking, Cade's still got his stuff. His fastball's still topping out at what it usually does. I'm not taking him out until he gives up a hard hit ball, and he never did.
Yeah, and the other thing is, again, that I've talked about on both shows is it was about the team and not about the individual. And then they got better from week one to the College World Series Championship Series. They got better. We questioned the depth of the pitching staff all season long. They turned out to have incredible depth on the pitching staff. Those guys came together. The ability to move guys up and down the lineup in terms of the batting lineup, you just don't see that again. Where guys is in the 3-hole one game, and then maybe he's batting sixth the next, and to be able to keep those guys focused, and then knowing again his team, the strengths and weaknesses of those players, and putting them in a position to be successful. I thought he did a masterful job this year of putting that team together and then pushing them over the finish line in Omaha.
And he did it 2 years ago, if you remember. He changed the batting order during the championship series against Florida. And I forget who the player was. He had a player who was struggling. Believed him, he moved him up to lead off or second so he would see better pitches. And he had a big game, and I don't know what they scored, 18, 20 runs in that game. And it was him tinkering with the batting order. Now, here you've been playing, 60, 70 games, whatever you've been playing since late January, and he's sitting there 1 or 2 games left in the season, and he's tinkering with his batting order because he knows we need to get better, and this is one way we can do it. Just masterful job both years, and I think you're right. The best coach in the country right now.
I would agree. Guys, we got about 3 minutes left. Just a quick question for both of you about LSU and Tulane football. Do you see Tulane football having an opportunity to make the college football playoff this year? With again, all the changes we've seen in that particular program.
I mean, there's never been a better chance than right now with the expansion of it. But this roster, there's so much turnover, so many new starters on offense, on defense. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Out there at the spring, I'll say it, I was very underwhelmed with what I saw from the quarterback position. That's why they added some reinforcements in the portal. But I will never count out John Sumrall, ever. What he did last year was incredible. What he developed Darian Mensah into was insane. And if he leads this team to a 9-win season with all this turnover and building through the portal and whatnot, I don't know how an SEC team doesn't come calling.
Right. I'll ask you the same question, but I'll ask you about LSU.
LSU, I think it's a very reasonable expectation for LSU to be in the 12, be among. It'd be nice if they won their opener, which they haven't done since 2019.
Since Joe Burrow, yeah.
But you have 1 or 2 mulligans in the SEC. You could probably lose 2 games under the right circumstances and still be in the top 12, maybe even 3.
The loss just can't be like an abysmal one.
Right. And so I think they're capable. I think Garrett Nussmeier came so far last year that he could be the most dynamic player in the country this year. That's huge. Like the Saints, the offensive line is huge. They got to replace some really good players on the offensive line. They think they have the talent to do it. But the main thing, the offense is still going to be good. They have to play the best defense that they've played under Brian Kelly if they're going to be in the top 12. And I think through the transfer portal, they've given themselves an opportunity to do that. But the defense has held them back for 3 years. It has got to be better this year.
I agree with you about the offensive line. So many transfers coming in. I think you only have 1 returning starter now. So again, there's got to be some cohesion there. And you're going against Clemson for game 1.
Yeah.
So again,
always one of the best D-lines in the country. And between Emory and Will Campbell, that's 74 starts over the last 3 years, give or take. I know it's over 70. Replacing both starting tackles.
Yeah.
And one of them went 4th overall. The other one went in the 3rd round of the Ravens. I mean, that's a lot.
It's going to be tough. But again, we'll have to say this. I agree with you about Summerall. Again, he's done an incredible job. Again, 2 years in a row turning over that roster, and you got to believe that again they're going to be contenders in the American for the very least. And again, this is kind of make it to the playoffs or bust for Brian Kelly. I got to believe, right, this year.
Yeah, I would think so, because he was brought here when they hired him. They said this is LSU's latest championship football coach. Well, he hadn't competed for one yet, even though they've won a lot of games. This is the opportunity. They finally embraced the transfer portal, did very well on paper. So, yeah, I think he's got to be in that top 12. And I agree with everything y'all said about Summerall. The only thing about Tulane trying to get into the playoff is that the margin for error in a non-power conference is almost non-existent.
Right.
So
And I agree with John.
It's hard.
Again, another great year. He's probably again in an SEC school.
I don't see why he wouldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be insane.
Especially with the transfer he's had, the turnover he's had to deal with at Tulane every single year. It's tough on a coach. It really is. John Sokoloff, Les Cease, thanks so much for joining us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Happy 4th of July to each and every one.
Thanks. You guys as
Enjoy
well.
your holiday. Thanks so much for tuning in. So many ways to catch our program. Now there's a QR code on your screen that will take you to my website, ericasher.com, also WLAE-TV YouTube channel. Click on the icon and you'll get right to our program. Remember, so many ways to catch our program now. WLAE-TV, WLAE-TV 2, Pelican Sports Television. Set your DVR. You'll never miss the show. Catch me on the radio, 106.7 The Ticket. That's 4 to 6 weekdays. You can listen live at ericasher.com, 106.7 The Ticket's website, as well as, again, we have our own app, 106.7 The Ticket app at your favorite app store. iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app, other digital platforms to take the show with you everywhere. Also, again, want to thank our underwriters who make the show possible. Please support our underwriters and, of course, the folks here at WLAE-TV who do a fantastic job producing our program each and every week. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, the best director on the planet, William Hill. I'm Eric Asher for John Sokoloff and also Les Cease. Have a great 4th of July. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Joe Sherman, Hall of Fame coach, will be our guest next week, so stay tuned for that. Have a great week.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.